Welcome to PoliticOly, episode 20. It's July 19th, 2020. I'm your host, Stuart Reed, and the revolution continues. I've been saying we live in an authoritarian fascist police state since I was in high school because I saw what the U.S. military was doing overseas. I felt that there's no difference between treating human beings with brutality and oppression in Afghanistan, Palestine, or here at home. It's state terror either way. It's inhumane. And if the U.S. empire was willing to do that to brown-skinned folks in the Middle East, I had no doubt they would do it to us here too, if they needed to maintain their empire. I was called ridiculous. I was told I was exaggerating. I was told saying the U.S. oligarchs are fascist had no meaning. I was just exaggerating. Almost 20 years later, it looks like I was 100% correct. Today, we see American police brutally enforcing white supremacy, beating people they have political disagreements with, maintaining slavery in the prison systems as allowed by the 13th Amendment, shooting people, running people over, working with neo-Nazis, destroying medic tents and water supplies, targeting journalists, pulling citizens into unmarked vehicles, gassing cities, and so on. They will use the most force they can get away with in whatever setting they are in. In Afghanistan, they use rifles with live ammo, bombs, drones with missiles, etc. But in the U.S. domestically, they use less lethal weapons, torture such as solitary confinement, psychological warfare, and other means that our fascist police state allows them to use on the people here. Make no mistake, they used white phosphorus bombs against international law in other countries, and they would use it here if they could get away with it. They assassinate political opponents with drone-fired missiles overseas. Now they're rolling out Predator drones in Chicago and other cities in the U.S. The ones here aren't carrying missiles, but they're the same Predator drones. They blow up school buses in Yemen and starve children. You don't think they'd do it here to us? This is the situation we Americans face because we did not stop the fascists from taking over U.S. foreign policy. This is what we face now because we did not stop the empire before it took over the world. We do not simply seek to reduce funding for police, though that is a goal we work on. We do not simply wish to increase taxes somewhat on the rich and call it good. It's not enough to end police brutality here if the brutality continues across the borders. We see that it is the three evils of militarism, capitalism, and racism that are killing our Mother Earth and putting us on a path toward brutal eco-fascism and mass extinction. We see the empire. Nothing less will do than the end of capitalism, the end of the commodification of labor and natural resources, the end of empire and the creation of a global society of collaboration and healing and respect for people and planet. Until then, the struggle continues. Thank you to the warriors out there defending Black America, the water protectors, the protesters, the medics, the legal observers, the civil rights lawyers, the journalists, writers, parents, caregivers, cooks, farmers, essential workers, and everyone else in solidarity against fascism and capitalism. Can we succeed? I don't know, but there's only one way to find out. The alternative is fascism until extinction, and I hope none of us accept that. Now I'd like to share a few words from the late Representative John Lewis in Washington, D.C. in 1963.
My friends, let us not forget that we are involved in a serious social revolution. By and large, American politics is dominated by politicians who build their career on immoral compromise and allow themselves an open form of political, economic, and social exploitation. There are exceptions, of course. We salute those. But what political leader can stand up and say, my party is a party of principles? For the party of Kennedy is also the party of Islam. The party of Jarvis is also the party of Goldwater. Where is our party? Where is the political party that will make it unnecessary to march on Washington? Where is the political party that will make it unnecessary to march in the streets of Birmingham? Where is the political party that will protect the citizen of Albany, Georgia? Do you know that in Albany, Georgia, 9 of our leaders have been indicted, not by the Dixiecrats, but by the federal government for peaceful protest? But what did the federal government do when Albany Deputy Sheriff beat Attorney C.B. King and left him half dead? What did the federal government do when local police officials kicked and assaulted the pregnant wife of Slater King and she lost her baby? Those who have said be patient and wait, we must say that we cannot be patient. We do not want our freedom gradually, but we want to be free now. We are tired. We are tired of being beaten by policemen. We're tired of seeing our people locked up in jail over and over again. And then you holler, be patient. How long can we be patient? We want our freedom and we want it now. We do not want to go to jail, but we will go to jail if this is the price we must pay for love, brotherhood, and true peace. I appeal to all of you to get in this great revolution that is sweeping this nation. Get in and stay in the streets of every city, every village and hamlet of this nation until true freedom comes, until the revolution of 1776 is complete. We must get in this revolution and complete the revolution. Or in the Delta of Mississippi, in Southwest Georgia, in the Black Belt of Alabama, in Harlem, in Chicago, Detroit, Philadelphia, and all over this nation, the black masses are on the march for joy and freedom. You're talking about slow down and stop. We will not stop. All of the forces of Eastland, Barnett, Wallace, and Thurman will not stop this revolution. If we do not get meaningful legislation out of this Congress, the time will come when we will not confine our marching to Washington. We will march through the South, through the streets of Jackson, through the streets of Danville, through the streets of Cambridge, through the streets of Birmingham. But we will march with the spirit of love and with the spirit of dignity that we have shown here today. By the forces of our demand, our determination, and our numbers, we shall splinter the segregated South into 1,000 pieces and put them together in the image of God and democracy. We must say, wake up, America, wake up, for we cannot stop, and we will not and cannot be patient.
May he rest in peace. And now, John Lewis and us leftists may disagree on whether the answer to the question that he asked there is the Democratic Party. He kind of went all in on the centrist reform Democratic plan later in life. However, if we take him at his word there in the March on Washington, that message resonates today. And the spirit of good trouble lives on. So, moving on to today's show, let's review some local news and upcoming events and ways to get involved. Then my main feature this week will be a full review of the Thurston County Voters Pamphlet along with my endorsements. You can find me on Twitter here at Oli Stewart. That's my main. You can get the show updates at OliPolitic, and you can email me at PoliticOly@gmail.com if you'd like to collaborate in any way. PoliticOly is getting really close to 50 subscribers and 1,000 views, so thank you so much for your support. And if you can take a second to like the video, subscribe, and share a link with someone you know that might be interested or might like the show or might want to interview or contribute in some way. If someone has some local music they want to share or anything like that, or report backs from local community or political events, anything like that, let me know, and I would really appreciate it. Now, moving on to local news, I'm showing this blank page here because I'd like to talk about an Olympian article, but I can't because it's behind a paywall. It's too bad we don't have an accessible local paper. As for the article, I've discussed the right-wing violent militia called American Wolf on this show previously, and they continue to harass and intimidate their political opponents with violence and threats of violence. On Sunday, July 12th, a member of American Wolf was harassing protesters in downtown Olympia. According to multiple eyewitness accounts, he got in their faces, screaming at them, and was assaulting a protester when several others tried to get him off of them. During the incident, the perpetrator was hit on the head and sent to the hospital with a minor injury. 2 protesters were arrested for assault, while as far as I know, the man who started the fight was not arrested or charged with anything. If we could see the Olympian article right now, they quote violent extremist Peter Diaz, the leader of the militia, who has a history of assaulting people. When the city sent out a letter asking the militia to stay home, he made a video urinating on it. He threatens people with illegal detainment. And of course, it was this guy who started the assault. It was his guy who started the assault. The Olympian doesn't bother to mention that the person injured started the fight, or that the volunteer street medics came to his aid even though he was attacking them. Yet another instance where the Daily Zero prints police state propaganda without any attempt at actual journalism. Here's an update from Poulsbo, a bit over an hour north of Olympia, by Andrew Bunyan in the Kitsap Sun. Quote, a Port of Poulsbo commissioner was arrested Saturday night for investigation of felony vandalism after a police officer allegedly witnessed him destroying a memorial to Stonechild Chiefstick, yelling, "F Stonechild!" When the Poulsbo police officers who arrived at the waterfront asked what he was doing, Commissioner Mark DeSalvo, 49, said he was using his freedom of speech, according to documents filed Monday, charging DeSalvo in Kitsap County Superior Court with second-degree malicious mischief. DeSalvo, who smelled of alcohol, according to reports, was booked into the Kitsap County Jail but was then released. When confronted by police, who described a 200-foot by 100-foot section of the roadway covered in shattered glass from broken prayer candles, DeSalvo used profanity to mock Chiefstick's name and, quote, insisted that he was doing the police department a favor because the officer-involved shooting was justified, according to court documents. Chiefstick, a Native American man, was shot and killed July 3, 2019, while in the middle of a crowd gathered at the park to watch fireworks. Poulsbo officer Craig Keller, who was trying to arrest Chiefstick for allegedly threatening somebody in the crowd, will not face charges. End quote. And again, that's Andrew Bunyan in the Kitsap Sun, and there's a link to that in the description of this video. All of the news articles I'm talking about, you will find links in the description below, so you can read the full article yourself after watching. Check out this Know Your Rights guide for protesters in Washington, put together by the Unemployment Law Project. I'll read from the second page here, but there's, again, a link below so you can take a look at the whole thing. Quote, the most important things to remember when having an unwanted interaction with law enforcement. Ask, am I free to leave? If yes, leave. If no, assert these 3 rights by saying, I wish to remain silent. I want to speak to an attorney. I do not consent to a search. You can never assert your rights too early or too often, and you must assert these rights aloud to you. Simply remaining silent is not enough to assert your right to remain silent. More information about the 3 rights you should assert when being detained or arrested. These phrases are supposed to fully stop police interrogation. Say something as close to verbatim to the supplied assertions of rights as possible. You do not need to have a specific attorney in mind or even know an attorney when you request to speak with one. Assert your rights frequently and confidently. And there is more information here, and I encourage you to go and take a look, because the Unemployment Law Project is the group that put this graphic together, and that's real handy. So take a look at that. Here's a post from Tacoma Action Collective. I quote, "While you're making calls and emails, remember Manny's family. His sister Monet has been fighting for him since she first got the news of her brother's death. She knew something wasn't right. She refused to accept excited delirium as a cause of death. She knew her brother was murdered, even before videos surfaced. All of the demands and actions we post come directly from her. Help us continue to amplify her voice by regularly going to tinyurl.com/Manny253 to see the demands. Show up, make the calls, write the emails. It's going to take all of us to get justice for Manuel Ellis." End quote. And this is what you get when you go to that link, and I've posted that below. It's actually a slideshow here with all kind of info, links, who to contact, and more. So take a look at that link below to get access to that so you can share it as well. And finally, I would like to share this fundraiser in honor of Manuel Ellis, and it has not yet reached its goal yet. About 7,500 left to reach the goal. So if you can, take a look in the link below after the show and go ahead and make a contribution if you can. And again, this is, I don't think I mentioned that, but this case was from Tacoma. Here's an update from Seattle. I'll quote here from Twitter user Spekulation. "This is just too much. Mike Solon, the president of the Seattle Police Officers Union, gave an interview to Omari Salisbury today and claimed the murder of Charlena Lyles, the pregnant black woman killed in front of her children, was actually suicide by cop. This is an obscene attempt to rewrite history. He has proven to be an absolutely shameless liar, but I honestly didn't think he would stoop this low. Not to mention, everything he is saying is exactly the reason we need to defund and invest in community health and safety systems." And this was not a slip of the tongue. He tried to bring up this case earlier in the discussion, but got sidetracked and had to shoehorn it in. This is a talking point for him. And again, that was a quote from Twitter user Spekulation, who you can follow on Twitter or on Facebook to keep up with a lot of Seattle uprising-related news. Further, here's a quote tweeted by @Seguiria from Shaun Scott's recent piece in Crosscut. Quote, "City documents reveal that the Seattle Police Department spent $60,372 sending Seattle police officials to Palestine. There, the city's cops, including Best, learned counterinsurgency techniques from an Israeli military that received $3.8 billion in U.S. aid in 2019. And there's a quote from Shaun Scott here. When Mayor Ginny called the Seattle police, quote, troops, she said exactly what she meant. So I've linked to that article itself in the description below, so you can go ahead and just go directly to that article and read it for yourself. All right, it's time to talk about the Portland Revolution. I think most viewers already have some idea about what's going on there, so I'm just going to dive right in. I'll start by reading this tweet by Ken Klippenstein. Quote, As unmarked feds snatch protesters off the streets in Portland, a memo leaked to me shows they'll be deployed indefinitely and in undisclosed locations with drones, quote, on standby to assist as needed. And there's a link to a Nation article called Border Patrol Portland Arrest. And reading from this leaked memo, quote, in furtherance of that directive, the Acting Secretary of Homeland Security has formalized the DHS Protecting American Communities Task Force, PACT, to provide an ongoing assessment of potential civil unrest and property destruction, and to address internal resource allocation and potential surge activity to ensure the continuing protection of people and property, end quote. And then from the third page here, let's see. They mention Customs and Border Patrol air and marine operations have also have assets to stand by to assist as needed. Quote, we will have resources deployed in several states at federal facilities and properties. However, blah, 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 can deploy within 6 hours of notification by the department to any location in the United States. So, make no mistake, what we're seeing in Portland can happen literally anywhere in the United States. And really, as I said before, this is connected to the foreign policy. So really, they are just extending their global policy of lawless or extrajudicial authority. So, but I'm not going to read the whole thing. So again, take a look at the link to read the full text of that yourself. Speaking of CBP, or Customs and Border Patrol, folks have been sharing maps like this one. This is the one from the ACLU, and this is describing the 100-mile radius from the border and coastline, which is considered legal jurisdictions for Customs and Border Patrol. This is important, but also note these maps typically don't include 100-mile circles around all international airports in the U.S., where they also claim jurisdiction. So it's actually even worse than these maps suggest. And you can read the ACLU's statement on that, which they oppose. They say that you have constitutional rights regardless of how close you are to the border. This is a quote from Twitter user at Juniper L. Simonis. With a content warning here for police brutality and intentional traumatizing. Quote, here is the unedited video of the feds snatching me without notice or warning. I had to cut it up into multiple tweets, but you can see the context for yourself. I was drawing the property line and writing in chalk on the sidewalk. So I'm just going to play a short piece of this at the beginning so you can see.
Whoa! Do not! Back up! Back up! Back up! Back up! I am not you don't touch me! I am expressing my First Amendment rights! I'm sitting in private property! Do not touch me! Do not touch me! Do not touch me! You are assaulting me!
And someone had commented asking what happened to them after they got inside, and they had replied, quote, light torture, violated due process, solitary for some hours, separated from medically necessary service dog and medication, not given drinking water or soap or sanitizer. 8 or 9 hours with DHS and USMS, which is U.S. Marshal Service. Here's a tweet from Twitter user at John in the Lefty about some of the uniforms and things that some of these officers are wearing, even though they don't have, you can't identify them all. Some just say police, but this is just a thread with some more information so you can identify some of the different departments. And this one, they mention dark uniform, quote, dark uniform with DHS label are Federal Protective Services, and I found are actually private police that fall under DHS authority. Notice this cop is wearing a Blue Lives Matter patch. And they added hashtag Blue Lives Murder to that. And Blue Lies Murder. So that's concerning. They have private police, but not surprising. You know, again, with the foreign policy, we let Blackwater and all of them roll through the Middle East with a free pass for violence, and what do you expect? It's going to turn around and haunt us here at home. Here's more from journalist Tuck Woodstock. Quote, here's what I need people to understand about the federal officers snatching protesters into unmarked vans story. None of it felt surprising to folks who've been out here since June. All the individual elements had already been happening, a small thread. Portland Police has already established a precedent that law enforcement doesn't need to identify themselves in any way, and they link to a source. Since June, there were already a myriad of different law enforcement agencies making appearances at the protests without any clear way to determine which agency they were from. Federal officers have been here for a week, arresting several protesters. Some were arrested by being physically dragged into the federal courthouse. Before federal officers started dragging people into unmarked vans, PPB, that's Portland Police Bureau, was pulling civilians out of their cars if they drove too close to the protests. Protesters, medics, journalists, observers, and passerby were already being arrested for no discernible reason while peaceably complying with local or federal orders. Too many instances to count here. And I will link to that below as well so you can read that. The rest of that for yourself. Again, that was a quote from Tuck Woodstock. Here is a quote from another Portland independent journalist source, at Lindsay P. Smith 7 on Twitter. And so there was a group of moms who came out to tell the feds leave their kids alone. And you may have seen this going around on social media last night or this morning. And so here is how the police responded to that very peaceful, respectful protest. Everyone was just standing around, as you can see, and the feds just start gassing and beating people anyway. So again, that was from Lindsay Smith, who I'll link to in the description as well. Here's a clip from Zane Sparling on Twitter at PDXZane of Twitter user at Taserface16. And this is so sad and disgusting. and this is that person who was brutalized. This is their account at Taserface16. They say, I would really, quote, I would really, really, really like to thank Tav. She's my street medic angel who pulled me out of the park and took me to safety when I couldn't see anything anymore. She stayed with me the whole time, and then her and her friends drove around to find an ambulance. She and her fellow medics are the real heroes here. I just wanted to thank her from the bottom of my heart. So, thanks to this person, Taserface, for representing for the people, and to the street medics that they thank as well. They say, quote, my hand is pretty damaged. The hand surgeon splinted it for now, but it looks like plate screws and or pins await me on Friday. And they say also that they're not seeking any donations or crowdfund at this time, and encourage folks to donate to others. So, respect. So I also thought congressional candidate Shahid Buttar had a couple good points. Whoops. There we go. And here's one, quote, we've called out right-wing fascist crackdown in Portland. My future colleagues in Congress, Rep. Blumenauer and Senator Jeff Merkley, have also raised alarms. It was at Speaker Pelosi who granted every DHS and CBP budget request since 2003, effectively inviting these abuses. And I think that's a great point, because it just doesn't sit right with me when I see folks like Nancy Pelosi and others in the centrist Dem leadership coming out and trying to call out Trump's police goons when they created those departments and funded them and gave them all those weapons and funded all the wars and all that other crap. So it's just so hollow and just really insulting. And so thank you to Shahid Buttar, and I encourage everyone to support Shahid's campaign in California's 12th district against Nancy Pelosi in the California primary there. So so that's half of the why it's so hollow when Democrats with positions of power criticize Trump's police policy. But here's the other half. And this is a tweet from Max Blumenthal interviewing Mr. Buttar.
I mean, she's done more than that. I mean, just to tease out your point, she appeared at a press conference alongside Guaido. I'm not sure if that was before or after the State of the Union, and just to be clear here, Guaido is the beneficiary of a right-wing coup in a foreign country that fits a long-standing pattern of Central Intelligence Agency interventions across the global south, particularly Latin America. And Bolsonaro, the beneficiary of a right-wing coup in Brazil, he was invited to speak at the CIA headquarters. There's also been a coup in Bolivia in the last year. So if 3 different Latin American countries have right-wing coups in them within the same year, and one of the leaders installed in the wake of it comes to Washington to give a speech at the CIA headquarters, and the other one has a press conference with the Speaker of the House, what does that say about the potential U.S. involvement in those events? The facts of which no one knows in public, largely because Nancy Pelosi, in the House rules that she unilaterally sets as the Speaker of the House rules deny every member of Congress, with the handful of exceptions that she particularly chooses, denies every member of Congress any staff with security clearance, meaning that the documents that would prove whether or not the CIA was complicit in each of these right-wing coups, which have sparked ecocides in every instance, whether or not the CIA was involved. Who knows? Nancy Pelosi knows. She's the Speaker of the House, but the rest of us don't know. Congress doesn't know, and that's a constitutional problem with profound implications. And so I just wanted to, as long as you raise Guaido, and if we're putting the CIA on the table here, I would call into question the agency's record on torture, on drone strikes, on drug running.
So thanks to Shahid for that statement. And this is what I was talking about in my intro monologue. Police reform isn't enough. The problem is the empire run by the oligarchs, and it's global. We have to stop American brutality in the U.S. and across the world. I'll end the segment on Portland with some words from the young DSA of Portland State University on Twitter at YDSA Portland ST8. Quote, "Hey everyone, since the word is we're a test case for the rest of America, here's a bit of advice from what we've learned in Portland. Don't expect your politicians to do anything to help you. Don't rely on them for anything. Even if they cared about helping, and most don't, the federal government has virtually dictatorial powers here. Trying to legislate them away is a dead end. Hit multiple targets. It's way easier to send a message if cops don't know where you're going to be. Use bikes and motorcycles to block roads so you can march between places quickly. Don't let politicians or peace police redirect your energy. That doesn't do anything to get the cops to back down. Big groups of allies with diverse tactics are welcome, but you aren't going to stop this with speeches. Stick together, walk your friends home, drop each other off, don't leave people alone. Dress to blend in. Bring a change of clothes. Finally, make sure to send a message that bringing in only feds only makes crowds bigger and angrier. And if you could donate, it would help us out." End quote. And that is a link to the Venmo at Defense Fund PDX for the bail fund. So thank you to everyone involved in the revolution in Portland and across the country and the world. Take care of yourself, take care of your comrades, and keep fighting. Solidarity forever. Now I'll share a few upcoming events. Tomorrow, July 20th, is being organized as a Strike for Black Lives. If you can take off work to support the movement, please do, and represent for all those who cannot. This page here is an event on that day in Seattle, which I'll link to below, but there are actions planned in many cities. This one is tomorrow at noon to 5, starting at Westlake Park in Seattle. And this flyer was shared by the Showing Up for Racial Justice Olympia Facebook, by the way. Here is a calendar of events for the Olympia area Oh, I see. I skipped a line. Speaking of Surge Olympia, this is their flyer about some upcoming events through Showing Up for Racial Justice. So tomorrow is their general meeting, and hang on, let me zoom in here. So tomorrow is their general meeting, and then Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday they have candidate forums with House and Senate, County Commission, and Superior Court candidates. So you can tune into those, and they are going to focus on asking questions about issues relating to racial justice. So those are going to be good candidate forums, and thanks to Surge for hosting those. And then Friday, the 24th, is the upcoming, the next Justice for Yvonne Solidarity event. So you can take a look through all those at the Olympia Surge page. Here's a calendar of events for the Olympia area put together by the folks from the Olympia Rallies and Protests Facebook group. And you're going to need to go ahead and join that group to get access. But if you are, legitimately interested in helping the protesters, I encourage you to do that. And if you're not, then you can just, screw off. But if you are involved, this can be a handy calendar. There's a couple things going on today. Black Lives Matter event at Morton High School in Morton, Washington from 1 to 3 p.m. And there is Art March for Black Lives at West Central Park Project in Olympia on the west side from 2 to 4 o'clock today. So if you're catching this right when I'm posting it, you still have some time to go catch that if you want at the West Central Park. Then on Tuesday, there is Skirt Wheels for Black Lives, and that is at Heritage Park 4 to 7. You can check that out. And then Friday, the event I had previously mentioned. So this week's educational link is to Liberation News, which is a YouTube account for the Party for Socialism and Liberation. They recently posted a 3-part reading group series for Marx's Capital. There it is. If you, like me, haven't yet actually taken the time to actually read Marx's Capital, this is a really accessible entry point, and some accessible discussion and some they have reading guides as well that are free, and there is a link as well to the text itself online for free. So the Marxism is central to Black Lives Matter struggles, so it's as good a time as any to dive in and get that done. So thanks to PSL for putting that together to help folks do that. Last link I want to share here is a GoFundMe page to help a black woman launch a sustainable farm here in Western Washington. Her name's Shelly Ann, and she's just getting started on this fundraiser here. So if you can take a look and if you can support, that's a good cause to help someone get started. So thanks to former Green Party candidate for Olympia Mayor Meta Hogan for sharing that link, and you can find that in the description below. Whoops. There we go. All right. Today's main feature is an overview of the Thurston County Voters Guide for the August 4th primary election 2020. I'll go through every race in the county, share my thoughts and endorsements. I will link to interviews, debates, and more where you can learn more. And then I'll give my endorsements for candidates elsewhere in Washington State as well. For context, I'm a lifetime Thurston County resident. I grew up here and I'm raising a family here, and so local politics is personal to me. I love our home, but we have major issues with racism, patriarchy, capitalism, poverty, state violence and repression, major developers having undue influence on government, and so much more. We have a lot of work to do here locally, and primary elections are a critical aspect of that work. And I encourage everyone to please focus as much as possible on primary elections and on getting good candidates to run in the first place. Don't wait for general elections to just vote and expect that is going to make a change. The primaries are critical. So let's take a look at the 2020 candidates from a socialist perspective. Let's get out the vote by August 4th. And then we both support the leftists who win their primaries and also start working on 2021 and 2022 campaigns. The guide we're looking at can be downloaded at the link in the description if you need it. Hey babe, do you mind getting me a water refill? Thank you, my jar's here. Pardon me. All right. District 3. My only comment here is Jamie Herrera Butler is terrible, and good luck to everyone challenging her. Let me get down to it here. There was a progressive in the race named Chris Armitage, but he dropped out after some complications, and I haven't actually read what happened in that case, so I'm gonna withhold comment on that till I learn what happened there. But so anyway, it's basically just Jamie Herrera Butler and some other folks. So anyway, good luck to whoever's challenging Mrs. Butler there. So, and hopefully we can find a more robust candidate the next go around to challenge Butler from the left. Now, District 10 for the U.S. House of Representatives is my district, and as you will not be surprised by if you've watched this channel, I endorse Joshua Collins. The Democrats in the race can argue who is the most compassionate capitalist all day, but the fact is we need candidates who will challenge the oligarchy, and Collins is the only one in the race. Oops, sorry, let me move on here. There's a bunch of candidates here, but so Christine Reeves is one of the top candidates, and Beth Dolio, and there's Beth Dolio, and then you have Phil Gardner, another Democrat, and Marilyn Strickland is the other major candidate. So, but anyway, I support Josh Collins. I think he has a real shot at making it to the top 2, and mark my words, if he does, it will be a national story overnight. If you want your own local AOC, but one that's not going to be friends with the capitalist Dems, please vote Joshua Collins for U.S. House of Reps in Washington CD 10. And you can find more info and donate at joshua2020.com, and you can find my interview with Josh from a couple weeks ago in the links below. I will briefly comment on Beth Dolio, since she's been my rep here locally for a couple years in the Washington State House. I think she has genuinely good intentions and does some important progressive work, but she has become too focused on Democratic Party politics and reform, and does not support the socialist political revolution we need. So that's why I support Josh Collins in that race. For Washington State Governor, let me scroll down. There's so many so many candidates in District 10 here. So I'm not going to comment on every candidate as I go, by the way. Look, there are so many random candidates in here. There's like 20 different Republican parties. Look at Alex Zimmerman here. Prefers Stand Up America Party. And then you have Trump Republican Party and Republican Party and pre-2018 Republican Party. And, Trump Republican Party and so on. So anyway, we can really just skip over most of those. And because from a leftist perspective, it's just not even relevant. And I will talk about Democrats a little bit, and the reason, if you ask me why do I focus on criticizing Democrats more often than Republicans, and first of all, I criticize Republicans all the time, but second of all, because when I'm looking at who to vote for, I'm not considering voting for a right winger at all. It's just not a consideration for me, and so I just skip over it, and I don't feel like I need to go into detail on all of those right wingers because, as I said, I'm just not considering them. So that is why I frame the debate from my perspective as a leftist. I frame it as the left versus the liberals or the Democrats, the capitalists, and that's why. So anyway, for governor, we have Henry Clay Dennison, who's got a minor campaign running on Socialist Workers Party. Says he's a rail worker and a union member, a former coal miner, and other working class jobs running on Socialist Workers Party platform. So that's a minor campaign, but you can check that out if you're interested. Oh boy. Let's see. So Liz Hallock is the Green Party candidate for governor, and it seems like a fairly minor campaign as well, to be honest. I don't know too much about her personally, but I took a look through her page and a couple of statements and things she had made, and there's some little bit of an odd some takes from Liz Hallock there, so I'm not 100% sure enough about her to endorse, though I support the Green Party generally. So, and I may very well consider voting for her, but I just don't know enough to endorse here. Moving on. Oh yeah, here, Trump Republican Party. Okay. Moving on. Don Rivers has a pretty good statement here about being a peace ambassador, but he's running a pretty minor campaign with no chance to defeat Jay Inslee as a fellow Democrat. So, moving right along. There's so many. I just don't consider Oh, what is this? Fifth Republican Party. What? All right, and then, oh yeah, this is the guy, prefers pre-2016 Republican Party. Good luck with that. Oh boy. All right. So anyway, we're really just we're looking for Inslee here. There we go. So Jay Inslee is not getting my vote. I will say I'm glad we have a governor who believes in science and takes some progressive reform measures, and I certainly am on his side when it comes to the anti-maskers and all that. So don't think I don't appreciate certain aspects of his leadership. However, Inslee has been notoriously silent on police brutality and the murders of Black, Indigenous, and people of color in our state. He's been firmly capitalist and done nothing to challenge the oligarchs or the corporations exploiting our state. He has not supported what the people of Washington need during COVID-19 or the housing crisis. So I'm not making an endorsement in this race, though I'll probably support the Green Party just to add Green votes. And I'll link to Liz Halleck's webpage, newdealwashington.com below, though, so you can take a look for yourself. With a dozen flavors of right-wingers in the mix, it's disappointing we don't have a better left-wing option. We need to organize hard for a serious governor candidate in 2024. And I assume that folks just didn't do that this time because they didn't want to put a ton of resources into going against Jay Inslee when he's just going to win again anyway as an incumbent. So that's my, assumption, But anyway, we just really need to organize to get good governor candidates in 2024. My first thoughts are Shama Sawant, Nikita Oliver, or Fawn Hope. Just the first three names that come to mind as potential 2024 gubernatorial candidates in Washington State. So I want you to comment below who you think should run for governor in 2024 to represent the left. Now moving on to lieutenant governor, once we scroll past all these other folks. Oh, and I'll mention Lauren Culp is a dangerous pro-militia, far-right sheriff. So watch out for him. Let's see. So anyway, though, scrolling down to lieutenant governor here. So I didn't endorse anyone for lieutenant governor either. You've got Denny Heck, who's been my congressional rep here in CD10 until now and has done a terrible job. He's made no effort to connect with the community, and he cares only about helping corporations and getting on TV by acting like he resists Trump. He hates Medicare for All. When an activist asked him to support it, he forcibly grabbed her arm and just got angry. And it's like there's so many instances like that where he doesn't care what the people think or want. He's got his own agenda driven by his donors. So please don't support Denny Heck for lieutenant governor. And I say that as someone who Denny Heck has been representing in Congress. So Marco Lias, or Lias, apologies for not knowing how to pronounce that. I'll assume Marco Lias. But he seems like probably the best candidate of the bunch. And Rory Summerson comments, quote, "Marco is great. He has my support," end quote. And local activist Leslie Cushman says, quote, "Marco for sure," end quote. So there you have it. Word from the community. Take a look at Marco Lias for lieutenant governor. Moving on to Secretary of State. I'm not endorsing anyone for Secretary of State. The incumbent is Kim Wyman. The Dem challenger is Gail Tarleton. And Gentry Lange is running as Progressive Party. Gentry did an interview on Progressive Washington, which I'll link to below, and I appreciate his concern for corporate influence on elections, but he said some odd stuff about being against mail-in ballots and other things that I don't really agree with. So I'm not sold on his campaign at this time. Sorry, Gentry. That said, Kim Wyman has been Secretary of State for years, and I'd certainly prefer the Democrat to win this race, though I don't know enough about her to endorse her, but I'll vote for her. No contest in the state treasurer race, another example where the left in Washington just fails to organize to have a good candidate in every race. Same for state auditor. For Attorney General, it's incumbent Bob Ferguson and 3 Republican challengers. I think Ferguson has failed to hold Washington State Police accountable. Same with corporations here. He's had his hands full dealing with the Trump crap, but I'm still not okay with his silence on Washington State corruption and systemic racism. That said, I hope he beats the Republicans in the race and we don't have a leftist in the race yet again. For Public Lands Commissioner, Hillary Franz is the incumbent, and the only interesting challenger is Frank Walbrown. You can see here he's running as Democratic Party, but if you look down here, he is Our Revolution Washington Bernie Kratz Coalition Data Manager, People for Democratic Party Reform Communications Chair, Washington Progressive Caucus member, and Whole Washington volunteer. So he is coming at the Democratic Party from the left as an activist, and so while I don't know enough about him personally to make an endorsement, I would certainly consider voting for him over Hillary Franz, who is probably just going to win re-election as the relatively popular incumbent anyway. Moving on to school superintendent, this is another race where the left seems to have failed to field a candidate at all. It looks to me like a bunch of right-wingers and the incumbent Chris Reichdahl. I'm disappointed Aaron Jones isn't at least running, so I don't know what's going on with that, but I think it's just like the just like some of the other races where Chris won against a crowded field last time, and now that he's the incumbent, folks are sort of backing off a little bit, and that's just so frustrating to me. Like, us leftists need to be running candidates in every single election, and even if it's just building for next time. So anyway, tell me who you think leftists should support for OSPI next time in the comments. I would love to know. Let's see. Same story for insurance commissioner. No leftists running. Next. Legislative 2, state senator. There's not much choice here with Democrat Rick Payne against a bunch of Republicans. At least he's running on a working class message. Legislative District 2, State House of Representatives, Position 1, and nobody ran against Andrew Marcus. Nobody. Next. Legislative District 2, State House Position 2, Veronica Witcher Rocket is more of a centrist Democrat as far as I know, but at least there's an option in this race, so again, kind of, come on, leftists, we need to run for every single race, even in the rural counties, please. All right, moving on, LD 22 State Senator, nobody ran against Republican John Braun. Next. LD 22 State House Position 1, I'd vote Timothy Zahn due to lack of options. Move on. LD 20 State House Position 2, Will Roulette sounds like working class. I'd vote for him. LD 22 State Senator, finally my district in Olympia here we get to. So Sam Hunt is the incumbent, and he's been a career politician for years. He works on some progressive reforms, like Washington Civil Rights Act and so on, but he has never made any attempt at connecting with the left. Once at a fundraiser, I heard him ask for money by saying he likes it when there's a lot of zeros on the check. So that's Sam Hunt for you, Democrat, professional Democrat. All right. Anyway, Kevin Young sounds nice, but is also a landlord and doesn't have any contributions listed with the PDC, so he's not running a serious campaign against Hunt. And I'm skipping this one. LD22 State House Position 1. Finally, a race with someone I'm happy to endorse and vote for. This is Lori Dolan's seat. She is the incumbent Democrat, and I endorse Johnny Meade, Socialist Party candidate for Washington State House of Representatives. Johnny is always focused on working class issues and will be accessible and accountable as a representative. You can find my interview with him in the description below. LD22 State House Position 2. This is the first one we come to that is actually a hard choice here. It's a hard choice between Glenda Breiler and Mary Ellen Biggerstaff for me, and I endorse both of them. I would be happy voting for either, and I'm not going to tell you which you should choose. Just please don't support Jessica Bateman, who is running and tries to sound as progressive as possible, and is anything but in practice in Olympia City Council. She voted to approve gassing protesters here. She is, anyway, I won't go too much on that, but as someone who has been represented by her in the City of Olympia Council, I would not vote for her for this office. I would vote for either Glenda Breiler or Mary Ellen Biggerstaff. And Mary Ellen is a Democratic Socialists of America organizer, a nurse, a Medicare for All activist, and I have no doubt she would fight for socialist political revolution in Washington State. You can find my interview with Mary Ellen below. I haven't had a chance to interview Glenda Breiler yet, but I'll link to her webpage below, and I encourage you to take a look and watch other videos you can find of her. She's not running as a socialist, and I honestly don't know how centrist she would lean in practice once elected. However, she has an indisputable background as a water protector, director of the Longhouse at Evergreen, a community organizer for missing and murdered Indigenous women, and she would bring a much-needed Indigenous perspective that we have not had in our local leadership. So that's why I'm not going to make a decision between the two at this time. I endorse both of them. In Legislative District 35, Position 1, there's only 2 options, and Position 2, there are no leftist options. They're either, so moving on. Thurston County Commissioner, Position 1. This is another race in the primary where I'm endorsing 2 candidates. Carolina Mejia and Rory Summerson have both earned our support, and it's a tough call between the two for me. You can find links to their web pages and my interviews with both of them below. Carolina brings relevant professional and lived experience and experience as a Thurston County employee who would be an effective leader, and she brings her perspective as an immigrant as well, which is sorely needed in Thurston County after years of right-wing leadership and rhetoric. I will note that Rory has been volunteering as a street medic during the Black Lives Matter uprising, and he's been out on the streets assisting the movement any way he can on a daily basis. So thank you to Rory for doing that work. And honestly, they're both excellent candidates, and I hope they are the top 2 out of this primary. Thurston County Commission, District 2. There we go. No good options here. I'm skipping it. Superior Court Judge, Position 8. I think at this time I would vote for Sharonda Amamilo, though I don't know enough about this race to endorse at this time. Earlier in the show, I linked the Showing Up for Racial Justice Olympia candidate forums on racial justice questions coming up, and I believe the one with the judges is this coming Thursday. So take a look at the link below to the Surge Olympia page and tune into those debates, because the judge races can be really important, and a lot of people don't know who they are or hear their words, and a lot of times if you just listen to like 2 minutes of each one of them speaking, that's enough to get an idea of who is a bunch of BS and who isn't. So those kind of local forums are critical, and I hope you tune in to that. So let's see. Whoops. I'll just put up the slideshow here. So, moving on elsewhere in Washington, I have 2 other endorsements in Washington right now, which is I endorse Jason Call for Congress in the 2nd District, and I endorse Rebecca Parson for Congress in the 6th District. She had just made a tweet the other day noting that she is the only candidate in the race that didn't work for McKinsey out of college. She went and did some volunteering instead. So props for that. Enough said. And if folks all over Washington State and the country can endorse and can support folks in Washington running for Congress, then Joshua Collins, Jason Call, and Rebecca Parson is a great start, and I will add Mariana Everson to that as well, who I have talked about on the show previously as well. I endorse her also. So I asked my Twitter followers who they are excited for as well, and Sarah Hansen listed 3 of my favorites, who I just mentioned already, Joshua Collins, Jason Call, and Rebecca Parson. So some agreement there from the community. And that's it for today's show. Thank you all for tuning in. If you would like to contribute or collaborate, please get in touch at PoliticOly@gmail.com. I really appreciate every view, like, subscribe, and share. So again, thank you. I'm about to hit 50 subs and 1,000 views, and I really appreciate it. You all make this worth doing, because it's a lot of work to start a channel and learn all this stuff and keep building it. So I'm only doing this because folks are tuning in. So again, thank you, and take care, love, and peace.